Thank you for joining today's webinar on NCPERS Legislative Conference Policy Day. My name is Hank Kim, and I'm the Executive Director of the National Conference on Public Employee Retirement Systems. Today's program is part of our Center for Online Learning, which provides remote continuing education to public pension trustees, staff, and other fiduciaries and stakeholders. In today's webinar, we will discuss the upcoming 2019 Legislative Conference and outline the newly revamped Policy Day on January 29th. Today's presenters are myself and Tony Rhoda, principal with the law and lobbying firm of Williams & Jensen. We encourage audience participation. Please submit questions by using the GoToMeetings portal. However, to ensure that we can cover all our topics, we will hold your questions to the last part of the program. So for those of you who've come to NCPERS and have been active members, you're very familiar with the NCPERS Legislative Conference. We've been holding it at the end of January for the last handful of years. And in many respects, it's been very, very successful. But I think it's fair to say that while it has been successful, there are things that we can certainly do to improve upon the program. And this webinar, what we're trying to do is to expose folks to the improved version of the Legislative Conference in the revamped Policy Day, which is on January 29th. It's a day where we encourage our members who've come on Monday and absorbed all the legislative and policy information and apply it to their elected officials in Congress. Unfortunately, where the Monday has been so successful in educating folks, not many of our attendees and members actually take advantage of our Policy Day on Tuesday to really apply what they've learned, and more importantly, to help educate their elected officials on the importance of public pensions, why we're sustainable and helpful to the larger economy as well as the state and local economy, and to effectively introduce yourselves to your federal elected officials. So what we did was we thought about how best to make the Policy Day an integral part of the Legislative Conference experience. We think we've made it such this year, and hopefully more people will participate in the Policy Day that we're going to be outlining momentarily, and therefore make the whole Legislative Conference experience that much more beneficial and educational to the policymakers. So we'll start off with just a quick overview of the preliminary agenda for the Legislative Conference. As you see, we start on Sunday, January 27th, and conclude at the end of the day on Tuesday, January 29th. And it's a full agenda with a lot of good speakers from the Hill, from the agencies, and subject matter experts. So again, we feel that in terms of substance and education, our Legislative Conference is really the premier program for state and local public pensions. What I want to do is really focus in on the last part of the first day, again, Monday, which is the briefing day, and talk about what folks can expect on Tuesday, the 29th, and why Tuesday, the 29th, it really is so important and a culmination of the Legislative Conference and the Legislative Conference experience. So at the conclusion of Monday's briefing, we will have a group lobbying pre-meeting to help folks who've registered for the group meetings that NCPERS will be setting up. And we will be splitting you into smaller groups, and these smaller groups will have a chance to get to know each other and be led by a staff member either from NCPERS or from Williams & Jensen, our partner in this endeavor. and to talk about how to lobby on your specific issue, and in what order and what topic area specifically you'll be covering. And then on Tuesday, this is where we've really expanded the Policy Day experience, where over the last couple of years, we've had a breakfast, which we will continue to have with the speaker from at least one speaker from the Hill. But beyond that, what we've done is now we've incorporated into a full day where we expect to have a number of group meetings that NCPERS will have organized throughout the day, but also give you opportunity to meet your own elected officials, whether it's the Senate, the two senators, or your member from the House of Representatives. Give you time to set your own meetings with them on an individual basis. And to help frame this out, we put in a lunchtime program where we hope the soon-to-be chairman of the House Ways and Means, Rich Neal, will be there, and then close out the day with a happy hour beginning around 4 o'clock, so that folks who have spent the day on the Hill can come, join together, let us know what your experience was, and more importantly, network with your fellow citizen lobbyists on your experience for the day. So this is what we've done for Tuesday to make it a full day experience. So when you're coming to the legislative conference, I think many people typically left on Tuesday. Part of the reason for this webinar is to notify you that Tuesday is a day-long program, and that if you're going to make your legislative conference experience worthwhile, you'll need to stay through Tuesday and go on the Hill. So, let's take a step back and talk about what the environment on the Hill looks like after the midterms. And at this point, Tony, can you tell us a little bit about what the midterms brought to Washington, D.C.?
Sure, Hank, absolutely. So the midterms were startling in a number of ways. One, voter participation was really through the roof. 113 million voters in the midterms. First time we've ever had more voters than 100 million. So breaking that record by a sizable degree, and a lot of it is brought about by the intensity of feelings on both sides of the aisle. In the next Congress, we're going to have 100 new faces, which is also going to be a dramatic change, and certainly an increased number of women members of Congress and minorities. So it's going to be a very different Congress than what we see today and what we see winding up in the next 3 weeks in the lame duck session. The body that changes the least is the Senate. Right now, that number is 52 Republicans to 47 Democrats, with a race today, a runoff Senate race in Mississippi. The Republican is expected to win. So that would mean for the Senate, and this is what President Trump talks about when he talks about the election, being a victory, is that the Senate Republicans will increase their number by 2, and that 2, and are likely to be at 53-47. The House is shifting to the Democrats, a net 39-seat gain right now, with 2 House seats still outstanding. But as the numbers stand today, it's 233 Democrats to 200 Republicans. So a very dramatic shift there. I'll stay with the House for purposes of talking about the key committee that we deal with, the House Ways and Means Committee. As Hank mentioned, the incoming chairman will be Richie Neal, a Democrat from Western Massachusetts, longtime member of Congress, and someone who really cares deeply about retirement. So I think an easy approach to Chairman Neal on a lot of the issues we care about. And swapping positions with him as the current chairman, Kevin Brady of the Woodlands, Texas, just north of Houston. Kevin Brady, a Republican, has been a longtime friend, really has helped us on many issues on public pensions. So I think having those two atop the committee gives me some degree of confidence that we'll have places to go and to talk to folks and somewhat of an agreeable audience. The Democrats on the Ways and Means Committee will be adding 10 new members, which is a tremendous addition. They have 14 returning members. They'll go up to 24 total. That's if they keep the ratios the same, which they probably will. And the Republicans suffered a great deal, both through election losses, but also through retirements. And, their numbers, of course, have to constrict. But even so, they're going to be able to add 2 new members to the Republican side of that committee. So a lot of new faces there, and probably we'll certainly know and have all those lists by the time you're in town in January. Some of those new members, if they geographically match up with you or your plan, should be easy targets to go and see. I'll flip back over to the Senate. So the Senate Finance Committee is really the parallel committee to the House Ways and Means Committee. And Senator Chuck Grassley, a Republican from Iowa, is going to kind of reclaim his chairmanship. They have term limits in the Senate, similar to what the House Republicans do. And Grassley, in his overall term limit, has 2 more years as chairman. So he's going to take those 2 years in the upcoming Congress. The ranking or senior Democrat on the committee will remain Ron Wyden of Oregon. And then with Orrin Hatch retiring, Dean Heller losing his reelection, there'll be 2 new Republicans on the committee if they keep the ratios the same. And then with Senator Nelson and Senator McCaskill both losing reelection, you'll have 2 new Democrats. So we pay very close attention to that, and we'll try to get to those members as soon as possible. And I think that's kind of a broad overview. We deal with other committees, and in our meeting requests for the group meetings, we will be doing both the Senate Finance Committee, the Ways and Means Committee in a broad sense with their pension and retirement staff, but we'll also look at the Social Security Subcommittee. Certainly we have a lot of interest in that area, both fending off mandatory Social Security if it's attempted, but also the Social Security offsets, Windfall elimination provision, and the government pension offset. We'll also look to do some meetings with the Healthcare Subcommittee. And then we will also look at the Senate Select Committee on Aging, which is an important kind of voice for retirement issues, and a committee that we have visited with before and want to continue that relationship. So I'll stop there.
Great. Thank you, Tony. So as just to reiterate, I think one of the major takeaways is somewhat, fortuitous in that the year that we revamped the policy day and make it a full day experience is the same year that we have this seismic shift in Congress with brand new faces, which gives us the opportunity to either start a new relationship with a new member of Congress or renew relationships with existing members. So, it's the question is, why have a policy day? Well, I think it's exactly what I just said, which is to start or renew relationship with our federal elected officials. It's to apply what we've learned on Monday and the various topic areas that are important to public plans. And I think for many folks, the thought of lobbying or having a conversation with an elected official may be daunting. And quite honestly, it doesn't need to be. And you don't need to have a long laundry list of grievances in order for you to meet your member of Congress. It could be just simply to go in and introduce yourself and your plan. And I think those are the type of visits that members really enjoy, where they hear from their constituents on the issues that are of deep interest to them versus, hearing about all the complaints and things that the member is or is not doing. So, again, we will certainly give you a list of things to talk about with your elected official. But I think just simply introducing yourself and your plan to your member of Congress or to your senators, if you do that, I think that's a victory. I think that, then gives you, the ability to circle back with them if an issue is pressing at the local level that they need to be aware of, or if NCPERS or the public plan community needs that elected official for a specific issue, or more importantly, if the elected official is asked by a special interest or by another constituent to look at public pensions, then since you've introduced yourself and your plan, then you are now, will be deemed to be an expert and a resource that they can turn to and follow through with in regard to any issues related to state and local pensions. So I think just meeting and introducing yourself to your elected official is a very important aspect of the legislative conference. In terms of sort of the issues, and every year as part of our legislative conference, we give to all attendees our legislative issues book, which gives an overview of the issues that NCPERS is concerned about. It gives a background. It gives sort of the legislative history, as well as the position we take on those issues. It could be those issues that we are supportive of, or it could be issues that that we're opposed. Currently, the legislative issue book is, we're still several weeks away from the new Congress even coming into session. So we're looking at some of the issues. So we haven't put the book together yet, but certainly by January it will be ready. Tony, you want to give the audience sort of a peek into some of the issues that we'll be addressing in the 2019 legislative issues book?
Sure. We will, of course, cover the ones that have been around a while, like PEPTA, Public Employee Pension Transparency Act, which we are certainly opposed to and have been opposed to. There's less of a threat for PEPTA in a Democratic House. If I were advising the proponents of PEPTA, I would say shift to the Senate, find a conservative Republican there to push it. So, there's still opportunities for our opponents to try to do things on that issue. And we'll talk about some of the other tax issues that have been around, like the unrelated business income tax, potential action on the pickup issue. And then hopefully, and Hank and I have been meeting on this and talking about it a great deal, even before the election, is the opportunity for our community to play offense. We've been playing a lot of defense, and I feel like we can play defense with anybody. But it's more fun to try to get something into the end zone, and there will be a couple of opportunities. One has been around a while, and that's the Windfall elimination provision. And some might think with Kevin Brady, who's been the sponsor, going into the minority status, that maybe that is over. Well, it's not over, because his primary counterpart and chief Democrat on the whole effort has been Richie Neal. So I'm very hopeful that Neal will give this a priority and when he formulates his legislative agenda. And then there are some other issues that we were starting to look at. The expansion of the $3,000 exclusion for health insurance premiums, that is known as HELPS, and certain enhancements that could be made to that, increasing that $3,000 exclusion, bringing in, because right now it's only public safety, but bringing in other public workers, and taking a kind of a fresh look at that. And I think we'll have some folks to work with on that, and there'll be a tremendous focus, on healthcare. There's also an effort underway by Senator Sherrod Brown of Ohio to look at introducing legislation early next year that would allow retired first responders who have reached age 55 to opt into Medicare. Because right now, as we all know, when you hit your retirement age in public safety, you're still relatively young, and you have to find health insurance. Sometimes it's provided by the city or the county or the state, but oftentimes it's through the commercial marketplace, and it's very expensive. So this would be a voluntary opt-in that Senator Brown is looking at. So that's another opportunity. And then Hank has been a leader, and NCPERS has been a leader on this whole notion of secure choice and state-run managed plans for private sector workers. And we were just talking about that earlier today. So those are some of the areas where we hope we can play offense, as opposed to just kind of trying to beat back what we see as bad ideas. I don't know, Hank, if you want to add anything to that.
No, I thought that was a very comprehensive overview. So stay tuned. The Legislative Issues book will be coming out in the new year with details on the proposals that Tony just outlined, as well as regulatory and other legislative issues that we haven't had a chance to cover. So now that you're armed with the issues book, and you've had a whole day's worth of briefing on select issues from the issues book, again, what I want to do in the time remaining is sort of talk about how people can lobby for those who may be intimidated by this process, and then give sort of a play-by-play of what the Enhanced Policy Day agenda would look like. So in terms of lobbying, Tony and I both had some experience working on the Hill, and Tony, please feel free to chime in. But when constituents come in and talk with either the elected official or with their staff, the staff and the elected official, they are certainly willing to listen to you about data and research and sort of the quantitative stuff that anybody can provide. But I think they're most moved by sort of the personal stories that you can relate that NCPERS certainly can't, and our opponents or those who are opposed to public pensions really can't express either. Sort of the good that your plan is doing, the people and the participants that rely upon your system, the dependents, the disability cases, without which the disabled or the ones who have been injured at work would fall through the cracks and would have to live off of social safety net programs. I think positive stories or stories that are very much intrinsic to the daily work that public plans do are the ones that really move the needle. And so, I don't think you need to come to Washington, D.C. armed with every single statistic there is relative to, public pensions, the average funding rate, what the average discount rate is. If you have information about those items, the funding status, the discount rate for your plans, great, feel free to share. But I think you should really share the personal experience as a trustee, as an administrator, as investment staff, how you're all working together to make the lives of your beneficiaries and participants, better and be able to depend upon their pensions. Tony, any other sort of words or comments that you have relative to how citizen lobbyists should talk with their elected official?
Well, I think you said it very well, and I think there are two critical things, and one is making that local connection, and then them seeing you as a resource in the future, because these things come up, issues will come up sometimes at the 11th hour, and they'll say, oh, this is a state and local governmental pension plan issue. Well, I didn't know anything about this until I had that meeting a month ago, but now I know who to call. So that's an important piece. And when you're really getting into trying to move a piece of legislation, I think having that story, that real life story that Hank had just mentioned, alluded to, is critical, because then they get who you are and they get the issue, public policy issue in a generic sense. But the personal, it's anecdotal, but it's still a personal story that helps to bridge the whole thing, and it makes it a lot more real to them. And particularly, you'll be a constituent, and we'll be representing thousands of constituents. So having those stories is really very, very important. But as Hank said, you don't have to come to these meetings armed with every statistic and every House bill memorized. But I think you want to present your organization in an understandable way, what you do, make that local connection, and then have them look at you as a resource. And then when we need to come back on a particular issue, it's just much more easier to do.
So in terms of outlining the policy day agenda, I think first and foremost, preparation for the legislative conference begins now. In that, in terms of scheduling your own meetings with your elected officials, from your member of Congress, your senators, or maybe you might want to hit all the elected officials of your state's delegation. I think the process begins now, where at your next board meeting, it should be part of the agenda that the plan should look to come to Washington, D.C. As a plan. So maybe trustees and staff coming together and scheduling your meetings well beforehand. So, in December, start making those phone calls or sending emails, trying to make those appointments over January 29th while you're here for the legislative conference. Then when you come to the legislative conference, sit in on the all-day briefing, which is on Monday, January 28th. And then at the end of which we will have a quick breakout for those who signed up on the for the group meetings on how to organize the group meetings. And then on Tuesday, January 29th, the day will begin with a bus ride from our hotel to take us to Capitol Hill. And we'll have a breakfast with our morning speaker. Then, excuse me, then throughout the day, we'll have a group meeting scheduled. And hopefully in between, you will have had the opportunity to make your own individual plan meetings. Then we'll have a lunch and lunchtime speaker. Again, our hope is that soon to be elected House Ways and Means Chair Richie Neal will be our lunchtime speaker. And then we'll have another space in the afternoon for more NCPERS scheduled group meetings, as well as your own individual plan meetings with your elected officials. And then we'll close out the day with a happy hour where we can all get together, trade some, lobbying stories and see where we think we have moved the needle, where we think we have some opportunities, and where we need to do some additional follow-up. So that takes us all the way through Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, the 30th, you would then either schedule, if you have additional meetings on your own, you should do that, or otherwise go home. So that is the enhanced policy day agenda for the 2019 legislative conference. At this time, we'll open it up for any questions folks may have. Okay, I think we've done a good job of covering it. So we look forward to seeing you. Oh, wait, hold on one second. All right, so we look forward to seeing you in 2019. Again, if you are going to be coming to the legislative conference, we encourage you to make the experience as comprehensive as possible, which means staying through and helping us lobby and educate members of Congress. So staying through all day Tuesday, and which also means that the preliminary work needs to be done right now, meaning your plan should get together, talk about who's coming to the legislative conference. Ideally, a combination of trustees and staff would be a great representation of your plan. And then making your appointments with your elected officials, and then coming here, learning about our issues, and then lobbying on Policy Day on Tuesday, January 29th. So with that, I'd like to thank Tony for joining me on this webinar. Tony, thank you so much, as always.
Happy to do it.
And we look forward to seeing you all in 2019. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.